check that mixer. Now phone no go fit enter that mixer because all the jack plug. Two of them get playback already before. The two side get playback already.
Yeah, yeah.
Now your cable is here. You see, say my mic dey work, abi?
Yeah.
So if my mic is working, that means you should work too.
Okay. All right. Yeah, yeah. Atlantica, you check? Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, you have Atlantica, well?
Only this mic line is open.
No. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Yeah.
The LSDP can do even much more, thanks to a framework that sets the tone 30 years from now, and thanks to our people. Lagosians have shown massive resilience over time, alongside an extraordinary knack for influencing economic development in the state. As a result, our strategy for the trade and commerce sector not only includes action points for success, but the acknowledgement and celebration
and SMEs towards sustainability.
Create that common agenda to sell that vision and to bring everyone meeting the need in capitalization. And a big
I must stop you there. Otherwise, you will go on and on, even though we do appreciate them.
All right then,
And
thank
if I
you
may
very
say,
much.
I love the fact that you turned around challenges into
Okay, so we're ready. Can you hear me? Does this work? Yes, great. So good afternoon, distinguished participants to the 2022 Ehingbeti Summit. So I need to find a way to make this work. So good afternoon to those in the room with us. Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon to those who are following us online as well. So my name is Stefano Niavas. I'm a managing director and partner at BCG in our Lagos office. And I'm glad to be here with you on this panel. We cannot do an Ehingbeti Summit without touching different parts of the economy of Lagos. The Lagos state is the 7th largest economy in Africa if you just take the state by itself, and is also the first one in West Africa. So the theme for our panel today is confirming Lagos as West African leading trade and commerce hub. The main focus areas of our discussion will be on the wholesale and retail sector, the food and beverages sector, the shipment and logistics services, and also the development of MSMEs, so micro, small, and medium enterprises. So we'll try to get this right. So I'm joined today by industry experts who had the opportunity, some of them, to contribute to the Lagos State Development Plan 2052, which is being launched at this summit. But also all of them are thought leaders in their sectors, so we're very privileged to have them. So let me introduce them one by one. So we have Mrs. Olufunmilayo Folorunso from the Association of African Ship Owners, Mr. Dinesh Ratti from the Tolaram Group, we can clap as well, who is also the CEO of the Lagos Free Zone. We have Mr. Ope George, who is the special advisor to the governor of Lagos in the public-private partnership office, so the PPP. And finally, Mr. Isiaka Ajani Lawal, who is executive director at Lotus Bank. So the rules of engagement for our panel. So we're going to spend an hour together. We have a countdown on our side, so when we get to 0, we're done. And what we're going to do is first have a conversation with the panelists. Then we'll take some questions from the audience before we close. So for the question, it's a little bit particular. There is a QR code that should be shown at any moment, normally. And you can, on this QR code, post your questions. And then all throughout the session. And then we'll pick some of those questions and answer them and address them to the panelists. You can address them to a specific person or just to the panel. Okay. So maybe let's start by setting a little bit the context of this panel. And I will start with you, Mr. Ratti. So Lagos is the major gateway into Nigeria. Everything that comes into Nigeria has to, almost everything comes through Lagos. So what would you say are the competitive advantages of Lagos today as a trade and logistics hub, and also the main challenges that the state is facing?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I believe the key drivers of trade and commerce in Nigeria, and of course more so in Lagos state, is the large and growing population. I think that itself is such a huge consumer market which we are sitting on. Now, added to that, the other driver is that we are sitting on a port-led ecosystem, which means it allows us to access the other markets as well. So currently it's West African market. If we add the Nigeria and the West African market, we are talking about a 400 million odd people, 1/3 of the continent. And once the Continental Free Trade Agreement comes on board, at that time we are talking about a market which is 1.2 billion. And we personally feel that Nigeria can play a major role in that particular market. So those are I think the key drivers. Apart from the market itself, on the cost front, if we deeply analyze and dissect the key cost drivers, there also I believe that Lagos and Nigeria in particular play pretty well. Now you look at the logistics, right, which is one of the biggest cost. The kind of port ecosystems which are being developed in Lagos, which will come online from next year. I think once that comes online, the seamlessness and cost effectiveness of logistics will come into play. Second being the energy cost. Lagos is blessed by having natural gas. Natural gas-based power works out one of the most cost-effective in maybe among the top 3 in Africa from a cost competitiveness. So that's the second point. The third is the availability of huge skilled and semi-skilled workforce. I think those 3 factors actually are the key drivers on the cost side. And then the key challenges, of course, when I say the drivers being port, the challenges of course is the port, which I think as part of the public-private partnership, which has been successfully achieved, and it will be commencing next year with Lagos State and Federal Government of Nigeria, the private sector consortium comprising of Tolaram and China Harbour. We have developed the port, which will go online from first quarter. So that plus the free zone combination, which has been the vision of Lagos State Government to develop the Lekki corridor. I think between the two, I believe that we are in a unique position to leverage that and use this challenge as an opportunity and pivot Lagos State in particular and Nigeria at large as the key hub for whole of Africa.
Thank you. So we were talking now about the logistics and the port, but one of our focus for this conversation today is also the food and beverage sector. When you look at the food and beverage sector, 80% of the food and beverages companies in Nigeria are housed in Lagos. What are the growth drivers? What are the reasons behind that? And what are the challenges that they're facing to get further and actually to expand maybe beyond Nigeria?
So of course, the main driver, of course, is the population, the urbanization which is happening within Lagos State itself. That offers a huge market. Now, what has happened as well is the growth in the organized retail, the e-commerce opportunities, plus the servicing to retailers using technology. These are the things which have helped trade and commerce and helped the product to reach to the consumers very favorably at the right cost. So availability of any product in the food and beverage space means a lot. The second reason on the cost front, which I talked about, the combination of logistics, power cost, the labor cost, the security environment is also pretty safe and secure. It's on relative terms, but it's relatively safe and secure in Lagos State compared to some other places, some other parts. So that also plays a role. And then the supportive state government also, that also plays a major role in developing the F&B, the last two stages, which is the processing manufacturing, as well as the distribution parts of the entire value chain of food and beverage. Then the industrial ecosystem which exists. So a case in point is the food and beverage industry has grown on the back of a huge ecosystem which is built to support these companies. For example, the packaging companies, whether they are the primary packaging, the flexible packaging or the bottle packaging, or the carton manufacturers. Most of them are located, 90% plus of them are located in and outside Lagos, which means that this actually helps to develop the final two stages, which is the processing manufacturing and the distribution of F&B products in the country. And of course, challenges I already highlighted, and these are challenges which are being converted into right opportunities for Lagos State and Nigeria. The importance, the key is that how much focus we do in terms of marketing these opportunities to everyone, both operators who are present locally as well as to attract investors from outside.
Thank you. Let me move to Mr. Ajani Lawal. Another area is the MSMEs. So many of them are playing in the F&B sector, but also in trade and manufacturing and many other sectors in the Lagos State. When we look at the numbers, we see that actually there are lots of micro enterprises, not as many as we would like of medium enterprises, small and medium enterprises. And we see that they are also the driving force of the Lagos State. You know, they employ 80% of the labor force in the Lagos State. In your experience, what are the key challenges that those MSMEs are facing in growing their businesses?
Thank you for the question. There are several challenges MSME face in growing their businesses. I'll just zero down to like 3 or 4. Number one is the right skill set to manage the business. Right skill set in this sense means that some soft skill required to manage growth and change. For instance, to move a business from one level to the other, you need to have capacity to plan, to manage risk, and to also probably generate financing for the business. Most times when you look at the MSMEs, you realize that yes, they are seeing growth, but this growth is almost happening by accident. Every year they are selling more. It is not that there is a deliberate plan that next year I want to do 30 million, year after I want to do another 20 million and so on. We are going through Lagos State 30-year development plan. We don't find that in a traditional MSME business. Growth comes and they just move with the growth, even though they could have done more than they are doing. And there are several skill sets that require to manage growth and change. You have risk management, you have planning, you have budgeting, and all other skill sets that require to take a business forward. Under the skill set as well, I want to mention beliefs. Beliefs or mindset. Sometimes there are decisions that need to be made that would help the business. But because of belief, for instance, you find MSME where you run a traveling business and requires to take basic insurance on the business, but they face to, and he has to shop, won't suffer a fire loss. That's a major loss to the business, and that will set the business back by some years. So some beliefs that they have about, we've always done it this way, and this is the way I read business from my mother, and I'll continue to run business in that way. But change are occurring, and they are not moving with the time. Beyond this, people talk about access to financing. It is real. They have access to financing, but don't have access to business-friendly financing. They take money from all sorts of lenders that are not formal and are very, very expensive. And most times, the business margins cannot support the kind of the kind of cost that they incur on financing. Clearly, the formal sector, in terms of financing, needs to do a lot more. However, a lot of the problems are also coming from the business concerns. There are things that they need to put in place to be able to access financing, which are not there. I also look at the business environment. There are so many uncertainties in our business environment. Beginning of this year, diesel was selling at about 410 or thereabout. Today it's about 785. Somebody has approached a bank to take a loan to support the business with the mind that the cash flow will support the repayment. Today, the cash flow has been thrown into shambles, and so there is so much that is around doing business. Of recent, power is one major one, which addresses diesel. Second one is the issue of FX. Dollar to naira was some months ago at a rate that it's friendly. Today, it has gone to the roof, and it then becomes difficult to plan when you have this kind of environment. Then I will start by talking about inadequate infrastructure. Infrastructure can come in several forms. There could be hard infrastructure, that could be soft. Hard in this sense is talking about road, power. These are major infrastructure that affects doing business in any environment. And people want to move from point A to point B, and they spend hours on the road and so on. That affects ability to grow the business quickly. Beyond the hard infrastructure, we also have what they call the soft infrastructure. To find any information today about small business in the country, and Lagos in this instance, is not too easy because statistics are not there, data are not there. It then becomes very difficult to have informed decisions. There are other issues around why businesses are not growing the way they should grow. But I will just pause with those ones that I've highlighted.
Thank you. That's already quite a lot. So maybe, I mean, we heard from our two panelists on some of the challenges, around energy, skill set, beliefs, environment, hard and soft infrastructure. I like the soft infrastructure. But also some opportunities. There are some things ongoing in the making on the infrastructure side, on the port side, for instance. And so now let's switch the conversation more to solution and what can be done, and also maybe what is the LSDP 2052 offering in terms of solutions. So, for instance, upgrading large informal markets to modern wholesale hubs, leveraging partnership and trade agreements to foster more trade, and also investing in the port infrastructure. There are lots of things that are ongoing that will triple the existing capacity and improve the logistics around it. So those are some of the initiatives that are included in the plan. But maybe now I would like to move to Mrs. Follow-Onshaw to talk a little bit about the port infrastructure. So we heard that we have significant margin of improvement on our infrastructure that will help us unlock the potential of wholesale and to become the wholesale and retail hub of the region. What are some of the concrete actions that can be done to actually improve our infrastructure?
Hello. For the first time, I have a comparative advantage of being short. I don't have to bend over. Concrete actions. Let's take ports. Ports, very good. The problem is not building the ports. The problem is access to the ports and exits from the ports. We commend all of the seaports initiative, but we must look at the infrastructure. A terminal operator, a port operator will say to you, there's no congestion in the port. And truthfully, there is no congestion inside the port. It's getting to the ports that is. Now, what the cargo owner needs is to be able to take his cargo into the port, leave it, have it sent out, and that. So whatever things we're doing in terms of structure, that we must address how to. But I was having a quick discussion, and somebody brought to our attention the opportunities. This morning, the younger ones said they don't see challenges, they see opportunities. And today, I have just been told of an opportunity. The barges. We're going to have to utilize not the roads, but the barges immediately from tomorrow or after Ehingbeti. What do we build around those? Take ports. I'm not going to go into too many. The ports bring much more than what the ports earns. Because first and foremost, you need to transport the cargo by road, by barges. That's an investment opportunity. It creates employment for the food vendors. It creates employment for the chandlers. Coming here today, I see more opportunities than the problem. But we have got to sit down and say, for the ports, what must be addressed. Good initiative, but more work to be done. Now let me quickly, wearing two caps here. The ship owner in Ghana, all he's interested in is bring his vessel, take the cargo, leave. If he can't get that done, he will not patronize our ports. He will use Lome. So whether we cry from here to Kingdom Come, our cargo is being diverted to Lome. I will take my business to where I can get satisfaction. The problem is going to become much more enormous. AFCFTA has come into play. That's a $1 trillion opportunity. Lagos State today, the advantage is simple. It has been placed by God Almighty. If I need to go to the next state without a passport, I would go to 3 countries from Lagos State without a passport. I would take the road route. Drop me on this side of Nigeria, go through the small gate, and I'm in the other country. If I want to come by air, oh dear, Lagos State has all the airport here, blah, 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 all over. Oh, if I want to come by the seas. So God has placed Lagos State in that vantage. Thank you for audience, vantage. However, we must shine our eye and take the opportunities we've been given and hold on to it. I'll stop there.
Thank you. So Mr. Ratti, we just heard Ms. Foloruncho saying that basically people have opportunities, they have choices. They can take all their cargo to Lome. But what we would really like to do is have Lagos not only to be the hub for Nigeria, but the hub for the entire region. And so that transshipment, instead of happening in Lome, would happen in Nigeria. What are, according to you, some of the constraints and some of the impediments for this to happen? What can we do?
Yeah, so what Mrs. Foloruncho said is aptly put up. Now the key is that, for example, the Lekki port, and I will cite that as an example because that's what we are doing and what we know more of. And Lagos State has been very supportive of this whole project. So Lekki port, is not only one port, right? It's an entire ecosystem which has been built around it. So it's a combination of Lekki port, Lagos free zone, and there are several other free zones which are neighbors to the Lekki port. And that kind of an ecosystem is what is needed. Now the ecosystems comes, fully complete with all kind of industrial facilities, which means that there are warehousing, there are standard factories, there are commercial offices there, there's a banking, entire banking setup which exists there. So this kind of ecosystem can be leveraged not only to use Lekki port as a gateway port for Nigeria, but to also pivot that entire ecosystem towards catering to begin with West Africa and then ultimately the whole of Africa. And why not? Why only Africa? I would say that we have got some very good treaties in place, like the African Growth Opportunities Act and some of the trade treaties with the European countries. Leverage on this and catapult Lagos as an export-oriented hub. As I already said, that the seamless port will offer that opportunity. Piped gas-based power offers that opportunity. Availability of skilled and semi-skilled workforce, which has got high work standards, that offers that opportunity. So we have the right recipe, and the whole move towards moving from oil to non-oil, I think that can be made a reality. What is needed is the full support, the full cooperation of the government to actually promote this kind of an ecosystem. So once that promotion happens, and it has to be, the words have to be backed with complete concrete action. So that's on the promotion side. Now coming to the infrastructure to support this ecosystem. So road is of course one ecosystem, one supportive evacuation mechanism for the cargo. But the other, what Mrs. Folarunsho said about developing the barging facilities, and that's what has been talked about even in the LSDP, that we should have barging facilities, much more developed ones at Agbara, Trade Fair, Epe, Ikorodu, which is the other parts of Lagos, to decongest the Apapa and then the Lekki port, which is coming on board, and also develop some of the off-dock facilities somewhere close to Apapa and Lekki, and then use them to actually ensure that the evacuation happens properly. I mean, there is no reason why 90% of the cargo which terminates at Kotnu and Lome is destined for Nigeria. I mean, that volume should ideally come to Nigeria, the Nigerian seaports. I mean, Nigerian seaports today have only 1 million containers, and similar GDP countries like Egypt and South Africa are sitting on 5 million containers. I mean, this clearly is a testament that we have not really realized the kind of potential which we are sitting on.
Thank you. So, you want to add something? I was just going to say, I like the ambition on this panel. Yes, please.
Thank you. If I didn't come here, I'm a Nigerian. Lekki Seaport is alien to me. Please do not cover that. What is available? Who knows about Lekki Seaport outside of Lagos? Outside of Nigeria? I have never been to any event outside this country. Permit me, maybe I haven't gone to too many, that I see Lekki Seaport being marketed, promoted. Which of us would have a gold mine like Lekki Seaport, private sector? I differ a little bit on the support by government. They've done the best they can. We can advise them on what to do to enhance. But the private sector sitting here must use what they have. I have just booked an appointment with him after this event. Let's go take a look. How can we promote what we have for use? Already we have a facility. How can we, private sector, now promote, along, of course, with government, promote Lekki Seaport? Immediate, low-hanging fruit for the trade. Madam, do not despair. We will get there. AFCT is here. We need to go to Ghana, we need to go to Benin, we need to go everywhere and say, we have an alternative. Please use it.
Thank you. So let's move back to the MSMEs. You painted all the challenges earlier. Now let's look a little bit at what can we do to overcome those challenges?
Okay. If we look at the access to financing, looking at Nigeria and Lagos as a case study, the landscape is changing. However, the players need to understand that landscape is changing. If you look at the formal banking sector, there are new players now called non-interest banks. The non-interest bank actually finance the real sector. They are able to provide options to players in the market. For example, you have a product in the non-interest banking environment that is not available in the conventional banking environment. That product is called agency banking. Agency banking, the technical word for it is wakala. Wakala means that venture capitalist who wants to invest in a particular sector of the market, say hospital or education, they pull funds in an account and then give the bank as an agent to on-lend to people who play in that sector. Those kind of funds are increasingly available either by many players or by a single player. For example, somebody can say that I'm interested in health sector of the country, and I'm putting 2 billion in that fund. Bank as my agent ensure that you lend to hospitals in these categories. That is now available through the non-interest bank. Another one that is available is that the conventional bank could not go into partnership with businesses because they are not set up to do that. But the non-interest bank are able to go into joint venture and partnership and then agree on profit sharing at the end of the business cycle. These are some of the options that are available in the market now, but people need to understand how it operates and then embrace it. They are more business friendly. For instance, the NIBs, they are not able to charge maintenance fee. It's not part of their business model. So you are banking at zero, except when you are looking for financing, and then you agree on the profit sharing ratio and so on. So those are some business models that are providing options to the businesses that require financing to grow their business. Beyond this, in terms of accessing finance, businesses also need to understand what the ABC of accessing financing. For instance, I'll give an example. I was buying something in an open market recently, and it's a textile, and then because of cashless policy, I have to pay through POS. Amazingly, the shop owner does not have our own POS. I have to pay through third-party POS, and this is a business that does about 3-4 million on a daily basis. You can imagine the turnover in a month and in a year. What harm is that doing to the business? If she wants to now approach the bank to get financing, she has no record of her activity. Her activity is with the POS owners. So I have to take time to educate her. See, this practice needs to stop. You must reflect your activity in your own bank account. What they also do, they say they're into trade. So as money is coming in, they are buying goods immediately and so on. So it doesn't reflect in any bank account. Even if you would put the money in the morning and you take it in the evening, let it reflect in your bank statement that you are doing this kind of turnover. So it shows capacity. So there are a whole lot of issues to address in assessing financing from financial institutions, because some of them don't have records. So there is nothing to lay hands on when you're trying to assess the business, whether they can pay back or not. And some, they can actually pay, and they are willing to, but they don't have the discipline of paying at the right time. These are some of the little educations that needs to go into telling people that this is how you manage the business to make you attractive for financing, for growth, and so on. I also like to touch on business education, and that is one area where government can play. You find out that sometimes people want to grow, but they don't know how to. They are afraid to go back to classroom because they didn't go to classroom in the first instance, and they run the business to where it has gotten up to. But they need to move beyond that level. Our training institutions, which can be anchored by government, can start to run, let me call it, trade MBA. To go into a trade MBA class, you don't need any degree. You have run a business successfully in the last 20 years. All you need is your business experience to move forward. So they will design a curriculum, 2-3 months, very flexible, and give business owners basic business skill required to move the business to the next level. beyond this, we also need to begin to look at support centers, and that government can also anchor. Support centers means that businesses require support from legal practitioner, accounting firm, consulting firm, but they are intimidated. Nobody wants to go and see a lawyer except you think you have a problem. But these are regular services that they should get on an ongoing basis. For some, it is expensive. So where we begin to have pool of shared resources, where you have a center people can approach for legal services, maybe subsidized by government, accounting services, tax services, that could provide some support for businesses that are trying to grow. I will give another example in that regard. Across the West Coast, that's moving beyond Nigeria now, Togo, Lomé, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana. If you take population of Nigerians in those countries, Côte d'Ivoire alone has about 2 million Nigerians. By the time you take those 4 countries, you might be telling us like 8 million or thereabout Nigerians, and they want to consume Nigerian foods. The bovita from Nigeria is different from bovita from Côte d'Ivoire. So what people do today is to smuggle those goods into those countries, going through hardship. We can begin to look at institutional platform through which those goods can formally move to those countries. And people want things like beans, gari, ugu leaf, some soap. So there is a huge potential market. We need the coast, about 10 million customers who want to consume Nigerian-made goods. But we've not put in place any infrastructure to support movement in and out of that corridor. If we have that kind of infrastructure, then you see that even businesses in Nigeria on a small scale could begin to access markets that could make them to grow and expand. These are some of the solutions you can begin to look at quickly to ensure that some of our companies and SMEs can begin to grow to the next level.
Thank you. So, Mr. George, I haven't forgotten you. So we talked a lot about the challenges, we talked about the opportunities, we have a big ambition, there are already some solutions, I'm writing them down, so because Ehingbeti is also about finding some resolution that we will implement. But there are also, on the focus areas of this panel, there are also lots of initiatives that are included in the LSDP. What are, according to you, the obstacles that could hinder the implementation of all those initiatives, and also some of the opportunities that we have already identified on this panel?
Okay, thank you, Stefano. So when you're on a panel like this and you're the only government person and you have a lot of private sector, you get all the hard questions one, and then you get all the top. So, well, you see, more seriously, it's I think with MSMEs, it's a very informal sector where it's hard to do business, And I think also one of the things I want to say is that as a government, I think it's important for us to point out things we've done, things that, can help, So for instance, when we talk about all these things, one of the things we lack is that we need to be able to know ourselves better. So I say that now, I'll point out to something like LASRA, the Lagos State Residents Association card. We're currently doing that. I think we've registered close to 8+ million people. So that way we know ourselves, we can sort of say, look, this is who we are. We can then have access to credit and access to other things, I'll also touch on, you talked about support. So I'll touch on some things like what Lagos State Employment Trust Fund is doing. I believe over the last couple of years, they're giving close to 10 billion naira in grants and loans, and it's very sector agnostic. It's not focused on one sector. It's they've given grants, they've given loans. We know that MSMEs over the last couple of years have sort of shrunk, maybe due to other effects, due to COVID, due to whatever. But having said so, as a government, we know that we need to be able to give the support. You talked about infrastructure. We know that we can't sort of build. When you talked about the ports, I know that it's been a long struggle to actually get the port up and running. We're almost there. We should be able to, and it's huge. As a subnational, I don't know many other subnationals that sort of take the time to sort of be able to sort of have this sort of huge infrastructure development. We can't build. There's no amount of roads we can build that we'll be able to build ourselves out of congestion in the state. We're a state of close to 20 plus million people. So we can build all the roads, but we will still, so other alternative sources of transportation, using the waterways. We have the rail coming. We recently just talked about the airports, which we're just, so it's huge. There are other things, a lot of things we're doing. I know we're also a victim of our success in Lagos, unfortunately, where, compared to the 5th largest economy in Africa, we're a sub-national, that's a national, so, but we can't shy away from it. Everyone is a Lagosian, everyone wants to come to Lagos, irrespective of where you are, so we know that we need to sort of, pull our socks up and sort of make sure we can sort of help. And so whilst we're taking the heat, the challenges, we know that we're here to also offer and prefer solutions and help as much as we can.
And in terms of solution, I mean, on the infrastructure, we saw that many of to be able to develop those infrastructure, you need actually partnerships.
Yes.
You cannot do it alone. I mean, you are in the office of the PPP. What are the key partnerships that will enable Lagos to become this regional and African and even beyond Africa, I heard, hub?
I think it's very important for me to point out with partnerships, private capital only tends to go where they feel their capital is secure. And also, we don't fool ourselves to say that, private capital is looking for return on its investment. So for us, what we've looked at is we've ensured that, we have an environment that is safe, that is secure, and that can ensure that private sector capital can thrive. So, we also honor the sanctity of agreements, because if you don't sort of go through your agreements, it makes it harder, it makes it more expensive the next time you're trying to deal with someone. So in terms of our private sector partners, enabling environment is key. We have fantastic people in the state and in Lagos, but what we have that's better than the people we have is we have outstanding institutions. So, with the institutions, it doesn't matter who's sitting there, who's there, you find that institutions work, and, you can come in and know you want to do business with the state, and you're dealing with a responsive state, and a state that, obviously has the institutions to back it. So, as I said, sanctity of agreement is key. We're looking for partnerships in various infrastructural sectors. We also know that, we also need to be able to respect the agreements we go into, and also be able to ensure that it's a win-win situation for both parties. Whilst private capital is looking to make a return on its investment, as a state as well, we need to ensure that every naira we spend, we have to justify and ensure that naira is better spent with the private sector as opposed to the public sector doing it on its own. It's a balance, for both parties.
Thank you. So I think this is the time when I would like to do the questions, if we have questions. Sorry, what? Because I think the way, did you get the QR code? No, yes, no, yes. No? Can we? Okay, the QR code is back up there. But that's the easiest way, because I know that we have the tendency, if I take questions in the room, to give your whole curriculum, give your opinion, and then ask the question. So I'm going to maybe first start with the one that were on the QR code, and then if we have time, I'll take 2 in the room, which I'm going to get killed for, but I'm still going to do it, and then we'll close. Okay, the first question. MSMEs are often underrated engine of growth and job creation. How can they be supported to take advantage of the AFCFTA?
Okay. The AFCFTA gives room to companies, regardless of where they are in Africa, to trade with other countries. Part of the challenge before now is the fact that different countries have different currencies, so we are not able to make payments easily and so on. But there's an initiative called PAPS, Pan-African Payment Settlement System, that allows you can buy goods from Ghana and then pay with Naira. That will go live very soon. About 10 countries are already ready to plug into that system. Hopefully that will take care of that problem. However, to sell goods into countries beyond local country, the quality has to be right. And quality has to be right. So as financial institution, I work with one of them. We are willing to provide financing to MSMEs to ensure that they have the right equipment and tools to get the goods out in the right quality and quantity, so that we don't produce goods and then it's rejected in destination countries and so on. So where businesses require support to ensure the quality is right, to obtain certifications so that the quality of goods being shipped out is acceptable. We also have what we call enlightenment sections. Recently, my institution organized what we call Export Forum. And the Export Forum, people were taking through A to Z of export. People were taking through how to start from conceiving the idea of exporting to what you actually do when you export and how you get payments. These are some of the initiatives that are in place to support businesses that want to trade or benefit from the opportunity of the fact that the Africa as a continent is now a small village for us to trade. I'm happy to announce that my institution is one of the institutions that is ready for the PAUS payment. As now we say go ahead, then we can plug into it easily. These are some of the ways we are ensuring that we can support business to compete just beyond, not locally, even into the other countries of Africa.
Thank you. So there's another question that is a bit similar. We're going to take it quickly. What are the plans to equip the MSMEs with the right soft skills? How will this information get to them? So on this one, I will maybe take it. Because I wrote down on one of my notes here that one of the things that we should do, business education, trade MBA classes from the government. That's one of the, so we could take this as a resolution. And then what you just mentioned now, the financing to understand how to export, I think is also part of this soft skill conversation. But I think there is also something that the banks need to do in terms of why do I need a POS? Why is it that expensive? Should I really get it, etc. So we'll put that on the banks.
Okay. Should I come up or?
No, I think I put that on you for
okay?
The entire sector. But I see that there is a comment there.
A very quick comment. I'm now speaking as co-champion of AFCFTA transportation for Nigeria. And I have my directives from the federal government. It is important that Lagos State, and I would please want you as the PPP and government arm here, we must have an AFCFTA body, AFCFTA in Lagos. It must not be hidden under this department or this ministry. Where do I go to articulate everything about AFCFTA? It's $1 trillion. Lagos, if you go to Balogun, I walk the streets sometimes too. Lagos is a nation. It's an African nation. I hear French being spoken. So I'm saying to myself, what the heck? This place is a natural hub for the AFCFTA. But we must have, I don't know what it is in government.
Quickly.
Just a minute. Okay. Because we came here initially, and I know that under His Excellency, convener of the Ehingbeti, the chairman who spoke today, the commissioner, you set up an AFCFTA. But to drive AFCFTA, it's not about SMEs only. It's about the total, everything AFCFTA, the trade, the business. My suggestion.
No, I hear you. I think also, it's, no matter how we slice it and dice it, the bottom line is about ease of doing business. So, we have various other, initiatives, but one of the things we do have is that we have an office that's set up, and it's termed for ease of doing business, So anything you want to do, you go in there, it can be your planning permits, it can be whatever it is, but, that office, I think, is best equipped to, because at times, once you start having little pockets, because you would have pockets for everything. It can be that today, it can be something, so we find that it's easier for us to centralize things. You go in there, so whatever it is, then they can then say to you, guide you and say to you, this is the best place to go, and, go left, go right, so it's something that I think we can.
Thank you for the response, quick response, yes. And I love it. But because I'm not part of government, yes. I didn't know there was something that could be?
I think it's a challenge. You know, we need to do better in terms of being able to communicate and say what we're doing. We're trying. You know, we're constantly learning. We're constantly, you know, but there is an office that's set up, and then what that does is it helps with being able to sort of help with the ease of doing business. And I think it's the Office of Overseas and Investments, which my colleagues, I can get her to come here and sit down and take some more questions, and I can.
If you have something, let's build on it.
No, we do.
Because
we do.
Something of the future, that the
do.
future is now, like the younger ones said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I promised some questions. Madam, you were the first one. We can't hear you. Can we do something with the mic?
Please, is it working?
It's working.
Okay, my name is Ronke Kosako. I'm the CEO of Employment Clinic. I work in the maritime and shipping sector. And just last week, exactly a week ago, 11 days ago actually, the Minister for Transportation actually, because Lagos is a port city, the only reason I'm here is because Lagos is launching a 30-year economic plan and will be called the commercial capital of Nigeria. We put a flag of Nigeria with different hands in the hands of the governor called Projects 1 Million Jobs. I sat with the employers in Apapa economy because what we had when I came into the industry was only Apapa. And in our presence, when Lekki was still on the paper, a plan, we were there advocating. Now we have 3 port cities in Lagos, Apapa, Badagry, and Lekki. The problem of Apapa was what led to Lekki. And now, as we are exiting into Lekki, Lekki is creating bigger opportunities and bigger problems. Like I said, 11 days ago here, the minister said, oh, I want to talk to Lagos State Governor. We have 5% stake as federal government, X, Y, and Z. But we are taking up the conversation where necessary. But when I sat with employers, including the MD of the largest shipping company in the world, MSC, with over 70,000 workforce in one of their subsidiaries, major, about 4 or 5 of them, and I'm not boasting. That is my boss on the table. I don't know if she likes to say this. Sometimes, a lot of times we meet on table, Mrs. Follow on Show. She should be proud of me anyway. So now, Lagos, 30 years, 2052. Employers, investors, shipping companies in Apapa say, see, your country has been running around the problem. In France, we do 4 million TEUs. In Nigeria, I'm doing 200,000 TEUs. Yes, because I engage them. Private-public dialogue. This is just a week ago. How can MSC be doing 4 million TEUs in France, and I'm in Lagos, you are doing 200,000, with having an infrastructure conversation? I can boast here that the company that can fix a Apapa infrastructural problem on a PPP with the government, they are on the table. But my government goes abroad looking for what is here. If the MD of MSC, CMA, GGM, Hapag-Lloyd, and all that calls or send a mail to their company globally, they respond to them because you have been in Nigeria, go and talk to the government. They are willing to talk to the government. Like I said, the infrastructural conversation is a very huge one. There is no way Lekki can be 3 times bigger than Apapa, and Lekki is not going to have 3 times bigger problem than Apapa in terms of gridlock, in terms of skill gaps and all that. So one of the things you said, trade MBA, whatever, all those things are the things that we've started basically first for Apapa economy. I will liaise with every other person here. Now, Badagry will come up again. If Lagos is going to be a port city, LSDP 2052, let's project, close our eyes and see. What is the quality of life of our people?
Madam, I trusted you. Huh?
Okay. So, like I said, there is a bigger conversation on infrastructural development.
Yes.
There is a bigger conversation on skill gap. Like I said, off the grid here, we are taking it up with the state government. I want everybody to come on board. Nigeria is doing things in silos. All these things need to be coordinated so that at least Lagos can boast of quality employment for our young people within the 3 port economies. So that Lagos can boast that we want to be 21st century economy. Lekki is not going to be the next Apapa. Like I said, let me drop the microphone. I'm speaking where necessary behind the scene, even to Ashiwaju, the incoming president of Nigeria. But I'm not happy about the way they cut the governor out of this conversation. Dr. Cardoso linked me up, and I told him today, I said, sir, they shut this thing down, the technical committee, and he said, well, so let me just leave everything off the grid. But let's take these conversations very seriously. It's not talk for us. She was my first boss in the industry when I came. I used to go to Apapa 4 a.m. I leave my house to get to Apapa, and I became a millionaire in that industry. And to the glory of God, I became a billionaire there by rendering services. Like I said, this is not the place. I am very well known in the industry, but there are bigger conversations for Lagos State if we truly want to achieve 2052. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now she ate all the time. So I can only take one more question. You were the second, and that's it. Then we're done. But a question, or if it's a statement, a short one.
As you to be both question and contribution. A question and a contribution. Okay, my name is Dr. Adams Adebayo. I am the chairman of the National Association of Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises. That's Lagos State chapter. So that is why I said, let me give my own question and at the same time, my own contribution. Madam, thank you. You have said it very well about the AFCTA that's coming up. The Lagos State, they just set up. I got a letter last week. I'm also a member of that committee. What actually happened is that the committee is being put together with the organized private sector. Like I am representing NASMI, we have NASI, we have NECA, SCCI, NASIMA, and some other people that they put together for this to move forward. That is the first aspect. That's just a contribution. Last year, I was a panelist, and along with some other members of the organized trade operators. So my question now is that, Oga, I've said a lot, and I thank your bank, I thank you. You've spoken very well as a member of financial institution. And Oga that is representing the government too. Mr. Kwejosh, you have really done very well in that aspect. My question is that, are we going to continue like this? Coming here in, coming here out, having this fantastic, robust contribution? What is the next thing? We need to know what to get out of it. As we keep on talking about the MBA trade and other things, that is, you see, we need to get to the roots. As at last time we have in Lagos alone, we have over 27 million MSMEs. Micro, over 27 million. In my association, we have over 15,000. 2 years ago, we did a program. The program was just for them to sensitize the government so that we can have the data. As Oga said, there's no proper data. That's not a problem. But the issue is that there's what we call lack of sincerity. I don't want to go further, but let me just tell you what happened to us. We have over 15,000 members. We put our members together from these sectors, like over 36 sectors of different clusters. Then by the time we put it together, we call on the Lagos State Inland Revenue. They are the one that sponsored the program. So the next thing, we hand over our data to them, they rush after those people. We lost over 15,000 of our members. Almost. Now we are less than 1,000. We are less than, because the reason why is that we've given them everything and they don't trust us again. And when you say you don't have structure, not that they don't have structure. You see, the small business want to grow. But by the time you expose them, you now find a problem somewhere how to get it back. So we need to look at it. You need to work along with some association that these people trust and they believe in. Because whenever I tell my people, you are still going again, you will lose some of your members because at the end of the day, this is it. But what we need to do, every part, if we are talking of after everything, is only in Lagos and Nigeria. We have the money, we have the people. But let government have the sincerity of purpose. So that if we say this is what we want to do, let them do that. For instance, now we are still going to lose more in terms of people. They are coming up with 20% sugar tax. That is for sweeteners and other things that they are using. Those who are doing soft drinks, they are going to increase the price again. So we need to look at the policy. Are there serious policies that have to be implemented? Sminder brought out all those policies. We were there together. It's only in Nigeria you shave somebody's head by at his absence, and you say, look at the head of the hairstyle you are having. And they will come out with a policy that you have to follow. So we need to let them know how do we harness this population? We have about 23 millions of people that they are not even inclusive. You said it now. Just to get common POS is a problem. Some banks are charging us up to 15,000, 30,000, 60,000. How do you want small business to survive with that? We have so many checkpoints that is going everywhere in terms of this one we collect. You find out that it's only the small business that pay the highest tax, and government is not getting to government post. I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. George, you want to answer? Quickly.
It's gone off, but it's going to work. So, okay, so thank you. So, you said a lot of things, but I'll just try as much as possible to capture as much as I can in the short time left. Okay, so to touch on what you first of all started off by saying that, outcomes. So you see, one of the beauties of having summits like this is we've had them in the past. If you were here earlier, we had the Honorable Commissioner for Economic Planning has stated the amount of resolutions that were stated since Ehingbeti started and what has been done, how many have been achieved. So it's a constant learning process. So we have resolutions, we come back and we give accounts and say, this is what we've done. Out of the 200, I think he touched that we're on 90-something%. So we're getting better. We're not at 100%, we're at 90-something%. That shows that we're looking at what it is has been asked of us by the citizens and our people, and we're trying to respond. Now, to the other parts of the question, I think to touch on it and say, like, certain aspects and certain parts, are within our control, certain parts are not within the state's control. So there are certain things that are within the federal government's control that we can, as a state, cannot legislate or cannot do. So we do our best to ensure that everything that's within our control, we try and ensure that we make the pain as little, alleviate the pain for our people. Because we know that if not, we cannot have a thriving economy. So it's on us to ensure that, we help our citizens and ensure that we can do what it is we can do to ensure that it's easy for them to sort of have their businesses here. And then to touch on the last point, I think it's also important to point out that for everything we want to do, I think as a people, we have to also learn that, there's nothing that's free. We need to be able to pay the right sort of levies and sort of taxes. And I say the right one, not inordinate taxes or inordinate levies. So we need to be able to say that and pay that. So I think once we have that at the back of our mind, and I think once people see that, once you're paying these right levies and taxes, and they can see what it is they get for it, then they're a bit more calm about it.
Well, so you see, I was not lying. This is so aggressive. There is a beep now. So the time is up. Can I take 2 minutes or the time is up? The time is up. So I think we're going to thank the panelists. Thank you for joining us. And we're going to close like this. Thank you.
Everywhere you look, possibilities. We're first among the rest, Lagos City. We great schools, good roads, modern infrastructure, and agriculture, quality education, economic innovation, leadership in action. So let the good work continue. Show the world what we can do. Ehingbeti today. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh. So let the good work continue. Show the world what we can do. Ehingbeti today. Transportation made easy, healthcare and security. We can see your head up, so let the good one continue. Show the world what we can do. Ain't that TTA? We're first among the rest. Lagos City, with great schools, good roads, modern infrastructure, and agriculture, quality education, economic innovation, leadership in action, action. So let the good work continue. Show the world what we can do. Ehingbeti today. So let the good work continue. Show the world what we can do. Ehingbeti today. Ehingbeti today. Ehingbeti today. Progress has come, yeah. Step by step, we're changing the face of Lagos. Step by step, we won't stop. We're building a greater Lagos. Left to right, development's rising. Strength to strength, economy is growing. From Ehingbeti to Ikeja, Lagos Island to Ikorodu, Badagry, fill your head up. Transportation made easy, healthcare and security. We can see your head up, so let the good one continue. Show the world what we can do. Ehingbeti today. Progress has come. Forward ever, progress has come. Forward ever, progress has come. Ehingbeti dé, ìlọsíwájú dé nínú Èkó àròmí sálẹ̀ pẹ̀lẹ́pẹ̀. Èkó àkété ìlú ọgbọ́n, Èkó àkété ìlú okun ọba ìlú omi. Èkó wa ti ń sáré ju áńgẹ̀rẹ̀ lọ. Ètò ẹ̀kọ́ wa péye ní Èkó. Iṣẹ́ ń bẹ fún gbogbo ọ̀dọ́. Gbogbo ọmọdé àti obìnrin ni wọ́n tọ́jú nílé Èkó tiwa. Iná wa mọ́lẹ̀ láṣálẹ̀, owó ọ̀nà wa ó tẹ́. Ètò ìgbàlódé wa ò lóǹkà ní Èkó. Èkó tá fi dún ọjà sórí gbẹ̀ndẹ́kẹ̀ ọmọ ọjà pàṣípàṣíọ̀. Aráyé wa wò lú Èkó wa bó ṣe rẹwà. Èkó ò ní bàjẹ́ o, Ehingbeti ti dé. Around, see the beauty of this city. What started as a dream is now reality. Everywhere you look, possibilities. We're first among the rest. Lagos City, with great schools, good roads, modern infrastructure, and agriculture, quality education, economic innovation, leadership in action, action. So let the good work continue. Show the world what we can do. Ehingbeti today. So let the good work Everywhere you look, possibilities. We're first among the rest, Lagos City. With great schools, good roads, modern infrastructure, and agriculture, quality education, economic innovation.
Metropolis is the business. Millions of businesses, small and medium, have emerged out of...
Have you ever been stuck in a traffic jam before? Running late to work or returning home because of a go-slow? Who hasn't? This story is familiar and we all know it by different names. But it affects every one of us. This go-slow phenomenon is a recurrent problem for the city of Lagos and its occupants. And it's one the Lagos state government has tried and keeps trying to resolve. At revolutionizing transport in Lagos with the introduction of the Lagos Bus Rapid Transit System. It was an initiative that oversaw the commuting of a large number of people with as little fares as possible in as little time as possible. By 2009, just a year after its introduction, the BRT had over 52 million passengers. Between then and now, Lagos State has led a decade of improvement, which has also revitalized the railway system to ease transportation within the state and to other states. The Lagos Blue Line and Red Line rail project have been pivotal to the railway system. Lagos State's focus on the railway system has also been able to draw commuters away from the road and reduce the road population and CO2 emission in Lagos. Now, LSDP intends to do more to help Lagos mount a world-class transport system by 2052. Have you ever been stuck in a traffic jam before? Running late to work or returning home because of a go-slow? Who hasn't? This story is familiar and we all know it by different names. But it affects every one of us. This go-slow phenomenon is a recurrent problem for the city of Lagos and its occupants. And it's one the Lagos state government has tried and keeps trying to resolve. In 2008, Lagos State took the first modern step at revolutionizing transport in Lagos with the introduction of the Lagos Bus Rapid Transit System. It was an initiative that oversaw the commuting of a large number of people with as little fares as possible in as little time as possible. By 2009, just a year after its introduction, the BRT had over 52 million passengers. Between then and now, Lagos State has led a decade of improvement, which has also revitalized the railway system to ease transportation within the state and to other states. The Lagos Blue Line and Red Line rail project have been pivotal to the railway system. Lagos State's focus on the railway system has also been able to draw commuters away from the road and reduce the road population and CO2 emission in Lagos. Now, LSDP intends to do more to help Lagos mount a world-class transport system by 2052. Have you ever been stuck in a traffic jam before?
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think I will rest on all existing protocols established downstairs. I'd like to welcome you to this, for me, the most important session out of all the breakout sessions this afternoon, the session on governance. And before we start, I will introduce the panelists that are here with me to discuss this topic. First, on my right-hand side, we have Mr. David Ukwagu, who is the director at the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. Maybe we can give him a round of applause. Please encourage him.
Then to my immediate right, we have Dr. Joe Abba, who is the current country director of DAI, and he was the former DG of the Bureau of Public Service Reforms. I will skip the gentleman to my left and go to my far left and introduce Professor Tunji Olaupa, who is a professor at the National Institute of Strategic Studies in Kuru. And last but not the least, I have Mr. Toba Otusoya, who is the DG OTCI. That's the Office of Transformation, Creativity, and Innovation in Lagos State. Okay. I'll introduce myself. I'm the only woman among four. Yes. Mother K. No. Thank you, much better. The only lady amongst four men that I really, really respect a lot in the public service space. I'm blessed to have been a part of the people who actually handpicked this particular panel. And I dare say that we're going to have a very, very interesting conversation this afternoon. My name is Jibola Ponle. I'm the Honorable Commissioner for Establishments, Training and Pensions in Lagos State. Thank you very much. Okay, so this session is really going to be an easy conversation, trying to make a link between all that we've been speaking about this morning. For those who were here at the beginning of this particular summit, we spoke about the Lagos Development Plan. This is a 30-year plan. And one word that kept going on and on from different speakers is the fact that this is an audacious plan. We're planning for Lagos State to be the Dubai of West Africa, if not Africa, in the next 30 years. I don't think you guys understand what's in that. Maybe because you haven't read it. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to read that plan, and even as I speak, I'm really, really excited. We are really planning for Lagos State to be a human-centric city, a city of opportunities where government is setting the infrastructure and the framework for people to thrive, for people to learn, for people to grow, and also for trade to blossom. So this session is really for us to, first of all, understand the link between that plan and the public sector, because I don't think a lot of people really fully understand that the public service is almost inimical and critical to developing that plan. We can talk about infrastructure from today to tomorrow, talk about transport and how we're building rail systems, how education needs to change from today to tomorrow, but somebody has to run that plan. And really, it's the public service. So I'm going to start off with that context in mind and knowing where we're going in the next 30 years. What type of public service do we need to deliver that plan? And I'll start off by asking Dr. Joe Abba, what type of public service do you envision can deliver this plan that has been set this morning?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me start by commending the Lagos State government for this summit. One of the things that makes Lagos stand out for me is the fact that it has planned consistently since the 70s. We often say in Nigeria, oh, our problem is not planning, it's implementation. But when you don't plan well, there's nothing to implement. And that's why we have the implementation problem, because we don't plan properly. So this is very important, what Lagos State government is doing. I mean, it's also very important to have a vision that you're working towards. So again, a 30-year vision is great. Of course, it needs to be broken down into various phases to make it realistic. But let me get to the heart of the question you asked. I think the kind of public service that the Lagos State government needs, or that Lagos State needs, is a facilitating and enabling public service. Too often in Nigeria, our public service is almost there to stop. Is almost there to make sure that things are not done. Well, if you're going to deliver this plan, you need a public service that facilitates and enables. You need every public servant going to work with the mindset that they're going to work to grow Lagos State, to make Lagos State more prosperous. And that's a totally different mindset from the Weberian mindset of the bureaucrat who is just there to, pass files and memos and just keep the thing ticking over. So there's a need for a different mindset entirely. The kind of mindset you get when you ask the guy that is sweeping the floor at NASA what his job is, and he says, my job is to help send someone to the moon, not just to sweep the floor. And that to me is the foundational thing that must be done, this shift in mindset. Now that brings in the need for a different set of skills for people to have. So you need facilitation skills, you need the skills of communication. You need to be able to manage contracts, because government is no longer about direct delivery of services. You hardly see government actually, fixing a borehole. They will engage a contractor to do it, and you need the skills from people in the Ministry of Works to actually be able to manage contracts. You need the skills for project management. You need the skills for so many other things. And most importantly, you need IT skills. And the government needs to be able to intervene such that even the underserved parts of the state are able to access services digitally.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Professor Olapa that same question. What do you see? So paint a picture for us about what that public service should look like.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. And I join my voice to congratulate the great Lagos for these incredible strides. Now, when you are looking at 30-year plan, it's a whole lot of future thinking. But like Dr. Abbas said, from the narrative of development planning and implementation and outcome in Nigeria, that is just 20% of the challenge. The real issue is execution. And how does it happen? The plans are conceived at high level, at the level of strategy. And what happens next is cascading it down to the level of the sectors. So they will develop their own strategy, to carry it forward, perhaps using medium-term framework. Then they will begin to, develop some investment sense, what's cost, where are the funding coming from, and all of that. But there's a tricky bit about the civil service, the public service, and all of that. When a new plan comes, there are a lot of plans on the ground. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is, how does it fit into the entire trajectory of development over the time? Which of the programs are on the ground needs to be sustained, possibly reconfigured to fit the new vision? Then which one perhaps needs to just wind up? And so how do we bring in the new vision into all of this? So what public service do we need? We need a public service with strong capacity, strong policy intelligence. The kind of vision you painted will require a lot of out-of-the-box strategic thinking. You need to be backstopped with some bit of future research capacity. You really, it's a scientific thing. You just make assumption in plan and vision. So obviously the world is now doing more of scenario planning that will enable contingency planning, i.e., okay, we did need to do a bit of trial and error and all. So how much of that capacity resides? Presumably ministry or sector has their own department of planning, research, and statistics. You then begin to ask yourself, what kind of capacity is there? Again, you might have advisors operating, but the nut and bolt will still have to get to the ministry. The second thing is that we are now in a VUCAized world. I know everybody in the room know what VUCA is.
Do we all know what VUCA is?
You
so,
know?
Prof, please break it down for us.
Okay.
We're in a VUCAized world, so he wants to explain
volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world.
Thank you.
So, the service that we know is used more to one-size-fits-all and directed tradition. So there is a need to begin to confront that bureaucratic nature. We are talking of a service that, the service that we know, that I grew up, I'm a retired federal permanent secretary, and the service is almost like insular, almost like not open to idea. We need a service that is more open to learning, from tradition of industry, from different professions. But the real thing for a very ambitious plan of this house is that the resource is not going to be linear. Indeed, the budget, because of the oil revenue and all, is getting scarcer. We are having fiscal issue. So we need a public service that is conscious of productivity factor. How can we get to do more with less? Of course, the COVID-19 new normal has taught us technology. It has to be tech-enabled. So again, we are there's an emergent fourth industrial revolution. It has its own challenges. So it has to be able to deploy technology to begin to really change the nature of engagement with the public, the nature of service delivery, smarter services, and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So what I'm hearing from both speakers is that we need a different public service, a service that is more adaptable to changes going on around us. We need a service with almost different skills. You've talked about IT skills, strategic skills. But is it that we don't have this already? I want to twist things around a little bit and so that my panelists can hear what the audience wants to say about the service. So for those people who are in the audience, how do you perceive the public service right now? Just 3 or 4 people from the audience, then I'll now come back to the panel. Yes, sir. Okay.
The present people don't want to go to office and be filling form.
Okay.
So we want to develop
apps. Okay.
That can solve the problem from anywhere in the world.
Thank you. So I'm going to just cut it short. I just want like 2, 3 descriptors so that everybody can, yes, ma'am, in front here. Just 2, 3 descriptors. How do you see the civil service right now?
Right now, it's insular.
Insular.
And it's inaccessible.
Inaccessible. All right. Anybody else?
So devolving it to the local governments is what I want to hear.
Right.
Next.
We have a lot of civil servants in this audience right now. So I want us all to be listening to how people on the outside perceive us. And perception, they say, is reality. So insular and inaccessible. I'll take 2 from this side, and then we'll move on. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, the microphone.
35 years in service. But while I was there, I told my colleague, I'm not a public servant. I'm a private-minded individual, private-driven individual. For example, when we were there, they called something SWOT. I said, this is for internal, this is for external. You said this is strength, this is weakness. In my own, there's nothing like weakness. I turn all my weakness into strength. In my own is strength. Then I now go to the external. They say it's opportunities and threats. In my own definition, nothing like threats. I thought all the threats
to opportunities. Please give him a round of applause. All right, there's no such thing as threats and weaknesses, just strengths and opportunities. Thank you very much, sir. He said something really interesting. He said he spent 30-something years in the public sector, but he doesn't call himself a public servant, but he says he's a private-minded individual. So what that says to me is that there's obviously a perception that public service does not work like the private sector. There's something that is missing in the public sector right now. One more person, and then we'll go back to the panel.
Yeah, a very good afternoon to the great distinguished panel. My friend Joaba on Twitter is Mickey, not Joaba. So I think the civil service right now is introvert to reserve. It should be smart, that's what I want it. It should be smart, accessible, vibrant, and it should be run on technology-driven measures that make the world go around now. And that's what should be the United Future. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Okay, last one. Just key characteristics of how you perceive us in the public sector.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wire. I think I would come from two angles. Before, I perceived public service as, I think the first word that would have come to my mind would be old.
Okay.
But now, I'm seeing a lot of young people, so I'm kind of getting more of vibrant vibes from the public service of Lagos State. I don't know about other states.
Thank you very much. That's a compliment. She's been working with us for the past 1 month, so I guess maybe her perception has started to change from what she felt and what people knew about the public sector and then what is actually going on right now. So with that in mind, we have heard we're all sort of public servants. Apart from, you're a public servant, okay. You know, so I'll turn to Mr. Otusoya. He leads the Office of Transformation, Creativity and Innovation in Lagos State. Having heard what people have said about the public service, what is your response? What are we doing in Lagos State?
Thank you. I think first of all, I want to basically agree with the comments coming from Dr. Abba as well as Dr. Olaopa. A lot has been said with regards to the kind of public service that we would like to see. And there's a lot of emphasis on technology, but there's also one additional point that I feel that is important for us to focus on. That is the issue of the kind of public service that we have now has to be flexible enough, or the type of public service that we require has to be flexible enough to be able to accommodate different types of contracts of employment. So the notion, the current approach is you join the public service and it's job for life, okay? So the world is changing to the extent that the kind of skills that you need in the public service to be able to drive the transformation agenda that you would like requires multitude of skills, and those skills are not the type of skills that you can cage into the public service for 35 years. Particularly the younger generation, they want to come in, they want to add value to one project or the next, and they want to move on to the next project. And if we don't start considering that type of flexibility, we'll lose the opportunity to tap into the skills of these young people. So that is, for me, that is very, very key. Now, some of the comments that have been made by Dr. Olakpa as well as Dr. Abba talks about the issue of, you know, the kind of capacity that the public service requires to move forward. And they talked about the issue about mindset, yes. The type of mindsets that the public service needs to have, which makes me want to talk about one of the initiatives that Lagos State government has put in place to try and change the landscape and the face of the Lagos State. What I'm talking about is the Growth Mindset Initiative. We realize that the type of public service that we have right now cannot deliver this huge 30-year plan that we want for Lagos State. So you need to actually change the mindset of the public servants from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. We ran that program very successfully within the Lagos State
public service. And what that has done, it has encouraged public servants to start thinking outside the box, to start coming up with creative ideas on how to solve government challenges. As a matter of fact, we had a successor program to the Growth Mindset Initiative. And what that successor program was able to do was we were able to create creativity and innovation ambassadors across the entire Lagos State Public Service. These individuals were trained to actually encourage civil servants to come up with innovative ideas on how to solve government problems. In the last 12 months, we received over 250 ideas from public servants. And the top 6 candidates were actually showcased at the recent Lagos State Public Service Ideas Day competition. Now, the overall winner of that initiative came up with QR code solution that could actually help us improve the IGR of Lagos State. So what I'm trying to say is that Lagos State government must create an enabling environment where we can empower public servants. There's a lot of talent within the Lagos State Public Service, and if we don't open it up and try to harness that internal resource that we have, then Lagos State government will be missing out on a very good opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, you wanted to say something?
No,
okay,
you are coming back.
Okay, so he mentioned growth mindset, fixed mindsets. You know, mindset is something that is very, very hard to change, to fix. And, you know, the truth of the matter is that we've had so many public service transformation plans in Nigeria, in Lagos State over the years. I know that we have another gentleman in the audience, Mr. Ukwoke, who was part of Project Spark, the DFID-funded project to transform the public service in Lagos State. We've had Project Wheel. Right now, we have Project Talent. You know, what is the problem? What exactly is stopping us from changing the way we ought to change? And I think that's really what we would like. As I said, we can't do it all alone. We want ideas as well from the audience here to try and help us identify what the issues are. What exactly is stopping us from achieving what we want to achieve? So I'm going to throw this back to David to answer that question, because he was also an integral part of that Project Spark.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good answers from colleagues here. Facilitation, the need to change the narrative in terms of the human capital within the civil service. But again, driving that a bit further, like the last colleague said in the panel there, that is no longer civil service for life. And that has to structurally change, that it's no longer civil service for life. Civil service, you need to drive the future of this state development plan for the next 30 years. It's not the same civil service that you have now or in the past 20, 30 years. Because give it another 30 years, we will all not be here, most of us. And the crop of people who will be here will likely be far younger. So in driving that change for this state development plan, you need a new crop of people. A new crop of people, younger, more entrepreneurial, with multiple faceted skills, who have traversed public sector, private sector, even non-governmental organizations, development organizations, and like he said as well, come into the public sector maybe for just a few years, focus on things they need to do and achieve for the public service, and then move on. So to do that as well, you need to begin to reorientate the current crop of civil servants within the system, knowing that you won't have them for that length of time. So again, I'm happy that there are 4 pillars within the context of the state development plan. And like you said earlier when you started in your intro, effective governance for me is the anchor to hold all the other pillars together and deliver for the state. And therefore, it means that we need to pay close attention to the current crop of civil servants, train them, equip them with the necessary skills as much as possible, mindful of their exit periods as well. while you are also bringing in new sets of younger civil servants who will be more motivated and more focus-driven, who have greater experience with technology, because the new civil servants that you are going to drive this plan with need to be really tech-savvy, seriously tech-savvy, and know how to use it to influence and to drive performance within the organization. And for me, performance too becomes very, very key. How do you motivate as well as monitor and manage the performance of civil servants within the system, such that when people are not pulling their weight, they are easily eased off. Eased off, so that you bring a more fresh and brand ideas and persons who want to work and deliver and be confident and proud of what they have delivered. Because the future civil servants you need want to see the impact of what they've been able to contribute, even for the little period of time that they will be there, and move on to other things.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much. You know, he said so many things. That's a really loaded response. He said we need to be able to attract young people into the service who are tech savvy. How do we do that? You know, I want to keep this as real as possible. How can we bring in these young people with the understanding of the fact that, number one, our pay is not the best? How do we attract these people who can sit in their bedrooms and they're making dollars, you know, working from in America or Canada? You know, they don't need to move out of their house. How do we do that realistically to attract, first of all, that young crop of people into the service? And I think I will ask Dr. Abba that question. How can we do that?
Thanks, Honorable Commissioner. Before I answer that question, there's something I feel compelled to address, and that is the notion that you can be a public servant and say, no, I'm actually a private sector mindset. I think if you're a public servant, you're privileged. Not many people get the opportunity to serve their country. Not many people get the opportunity to exercise state power. Absolutely. Not many people get the opportunity to help shape policy that can affect the lives of millions of people.
Absolutely.
So if you're a public servant, you should be proud of yourself.
Absolutely.
And you should claim it with your full chest.
Please, every public servant in the audience, you know, you need to give a round of applause to everyone, because I can see many. Thank you very much, sir.
And you know, a servant, any servant at all, wakes up before their boss, doesn't go to bed until their boss goes to bed, serves all day, gets paid very little, never answers back, even when they are right, when they are spoken harshly to. These are the things you have to take as a public servant, and not many people can do it. So let's be very, very proud when we say we're public servants. But back to your question about how we attract the kind of talent we need. Is exactly through what I've said. We need to change the mindset and the perception. Because if the young person feels, look, I could be making millions selling soft drinks. However, here I am, I can actually affect the lives of millions of people. I can actually make the world a better place. That understanding is not in the minds of many young people. They see the public service as just stopping and being a barrier and being corrupt. So we need to change that perception in their minds, first of all. Secondly, we need to pay a reasonable wage. I was really happy to hear that His Excellency, the Governor, approved a pay rise for public servants. I hope that that is structured in a way that makes sense. We need to incentivize better performance. We can't have this uniform mediocrity where everyone is paid the same thing regardless of what you're contributing to the system. So we need to do that, and it's by so doing that you create these niches where young people can come in, they realize they don't have to. In my office, we only come to the office 2 days a week. Now we've moved it to 3 days a week. The rest of the time, people are working at home. And so you're thinking, okay, so why, a young person is thinking, why must I go and mark time from 8 to 4 every day? when there might even be no lights, no internet, no nothing. So you need to start to create a system where you can gradually build a new core of people who work differently, are paid differently, have different responsibilities, have different accountabilities. If you're able to do that, I think you'll attract better people.
Thank you so much. I've gotten quite a few things from there. You know, it's to really restructure how we remunerate these new people coming in, ensure we pay them well, and give them the flexibility to be able to do, is it the side hustle on the side? But I don't think that's in line with public sector rules. But
no, not side hustle. Not side hustle. Just working differently.
Working differently.
Yeah. If I want to write, for instance, I can't write when I'm in the office because I have visitors every day. So you end up doing 8 hours of work, and then that's when your work starts, because you know you have a constant stream of visitors. But if I'm able to take a day, a week where I can just sit at home in peace and write, then you know I can actually be a lot more productive. That's what I meant.
All right, so that actually brings me to the next question, and I think the last two speakers have actually alluded to it. We are supposed to develop a competent, motivated, performance-driven civil service. Right now, what we find and what we have is a civil service that, you know, whether you come to work or you don't come to work, everybody gets paid at the end of the month the same amount. Once you have done 4 years, 5 years on one level, automatically they say, I am due for promotion. You know, I'm due for promotion. Not that I have earned promotion based on my performance and I've done very well. We're due for promotion and everybody is moving up the ladder. So how do we shift this? How do we, as you said, monitor, measure performance? Is it even possible? With such a large, we have 101,000 people in Lagos State Public Service right now, as I yesterday when I looked at our numbers. How do we drive performance management to ensure that every single person is not just marking time, but is contributing their quota to achieving the KPIs of the government? So I'll ask Professor Olakwa that question. And also
Thank you very much. You see, we must get a handle on some structural and systemic issues that makes it absolutely difficult, I won't say impossible, to get a new generation of public managers that you have in mind. First, if you attempt to measure the IQ of a typical public service in Nigeria, it's going to be very low. Why? Is public service based, recruitment and HR competency based? How do you bring civil servants into the service? For the last time I checked, in most service commission, is governor recommending, you know, and all of that. So that's one. The second thing is we seemingly have gotten fixated into a crisis where, because of politics, we want to get employ people and all. We prefer to get 1,000 civil servants who are mediocres. When actually you can get 100 that are properly paid and are expert who can do the job. So there must be a shift. And Lagos State, for my last check, is the first going on the track of professionalizing the HR fund. Now the next thing we need to look at, immediately you begin to tinker with that, then you ask yourself, in what context does a civil servant operate? It's still more like public service rule, one-size-fits-all standards. It's still more like rule compliance. It's still more like analog. Then you still use APA for purposes of assessing who is performing or not. So these are, so then what is the work culture? my PhD thesis was this. In virtually all public service in Nigeria, there are too many people doing nothing. They are doing nothing not because they are, but because really the service can do without them. A public service in Nigeria technically relies more on consultancy services to do the core job. Again, we must never be carried away. Every public service, whether in Nigeria or everywhere in the world, does not rely on the civil service alone. We have the core service, which is responsible for policy and continuity. We have a lot of agencies that smart governors can put into good, task forces manned by high-end people, and more often than not, they use that track. There are a lot of private-public partnerships. There are a lot of contracting, outsourcing, and all of that. So there are methodology, coping mechanism where the civil service is unable to rise to the challenge of. So, and when you are looking at the service, using the typical management template, you don't just look at men. You have to ask yourself method, within which system are they operating? What about money? How is budgeting done? Now, is it performance budgeting or is it incremental budgeting where you simply spend and all of that? You need to look at all of that. How is your inventory managed, material? What's the maintenance culture? How do you manage projects? What level of supervision? What standardization do you use to get, who gets the contracts? What kind of procurement procedure is used? You also need to say the working tools. Does the civil servant even have the working tool to really work? How much of the machine technology have been put in place? So immediately we get all of a handle on all of that, we will then begin to, know where to put our fingers in order to be able to change. But absolutely, it is not difficult at all to push this public service. The tricky end that we need to manage well is the industrial relation bit. I recall when I was consulting for Fashola, he had gotten PwC, I can't remember Gulewe at that time. He really wanted to bring the high-end people who can be properly paid. There was a job evaluation being done. But nobody could face the unions. Because really, you need to create the space in order to bring the high-end people who will do the job. So it's a lot of change management there. And
thank you so much, sir. Okay, he said again, quite a very, very, very loaded response. But I'm going to just, before I take questions from the audience, what are we doing with performance management? I mean, there's a lot going on in Lagos State right now. I know that, for instance, for permanent secretaries now, it's not business as usual. It's not who you know. I have a few of the new PSs here. You guys went through hell and high water to earn your position as permanent secretary. I have, there's a lady over there, Madam Suki, she's there, and she can testify to the fact that there was a full-day assessment center. Before that, you had a CBT. The people that made it through the CBT had a full-day assessment center. You did presentations, you did group work, you did, there was case studies, and this assessment was done by both public and private sector individuals. So you can't say, oh, I know this person influenced my results. And there's not one, there are no two exercises that are managed by just one person. So it was a free and fair assessment. And I think we're on the third cycle now where we have a crop of permanent secretaries that have gone through assessment, and we're picking the best of the best for that top role in the Lagos State Public Service. And we're soon going to move down to director level. So, the change is happening where people realize that it's merit before you get to the top, and we're going to push that down. So I'm just going to ask OTCI, DG OTCI, Mr. Otusonya, to tell us a little bit more about other, Project Talent is one project that we're doing right now, where we're dealing with quite a few of these things. Leadership is key for us in Lagos State. How do we dilute the leadership style we have right now? How do we attract the right people? How do we engage people in the service? How do we motivate them? And also nurture them. There's a lot going on in capacity development. We have an LMS now in Lagos State where we have 30,000 people that have signed on to the learning management system. They can, from your phone, from your tablet, you can access these courses, 14,000 courses plus, where you can learn on different tracks. So there's quite a lot going on in the service. But I want you to answer that question. Give us a high-level overview, then I'll ask people to ask questions.
Thank you. Honorable Commissioner, I can see that you are very excited because you've actually gone ahead to actually speak about a lot of the initiatives that OTCI is handling in conjunction with the core establishment agencies, of course, to try and bring discipline into the public service and manage our people much, much better. Just like you mentioned, we have a reform program that we are currently running, which is Project Talent. Now, Project Talent is really trying to transform the HR value chain within the Lagos State Public Service. And it has a lot of work streams. We are currently in phase 1 of that particular project. And I'll quickly just touch on some of the work streams and what those work streams are intending to do. First of all, which relates to your question, I want to talk about workforce planning. What we're looking to do in Lagos State is, just like Dr. Olaopa mentioned, when you go to most public service in any of the states of the Federation, it's usually overbloated. You have too many people running around, not necessarily doing anything. You go to some ministries, they have under capacity, and then you go to others, they have overcapacity. So how do you try to balance all of that to make sure that you have the right people in the right place, doing the right things at all times? So workforce planning, which is more or less what we refer to as workforce optimization, that is really looking to address that so that we have a scientific way of actually measuring the manpower that is required across all cadres. So that's one aspect of Project Talent. Another aspect which is also critical and very important is the performance management. Now, under performance management, what we're looking to do is that in most public services, they rely on schemes of service. In Lagos State, we're moving completely away from schemes of service. We want to ensure that all the job roles within Lagos State have job descriptions. When they have job descriptions, it's a lot easier to actually set targets, and it's a lot easier to also monitor whether those targets are being achieved. We're also trying to borrow some of the practices in the private sector. We are exploring things like performance-related pay, so that not everybody is on the same pay level. So if we're able to identify that some individuals are performing exceptionally well, there should be some element of reward for those individuals. We're also looking at a high flyer scheme, which is also popular within the private sector as a way of fast-tracking those individuals that are doing exceptionally well. Other areas within Project Talent that is also important is we're looking at the culture. We've talked about how the public service is currently perceived, and a lot of comments have come up in terms of old, inaccessible, and all of those things. So we're asking the critical question, what kind of culture do we need in the public service? I mean, what is the current culture? And people have alluded to their own perception. So what type of culture would you need in the public service, and how do we imbibe that culture where, I think Dr. Abba mentioned the public service that is more or less a facilitator where, there's a clear element of collaboration across all ministries where we are no longer working in silos. So those are the kind of issues that we are thinking about in terms of having a change in direction in terms of how the Lagos State Public Service is managed. And I must not forget to mention the learning management system. For me, one of the reasons why that is really, really important is that prior to the launch of that platform, some of the issues that come up from civil servants or criticism levied at your ministry is that it's the same set of people that we send on training all the time, that a lot of people actually miss out on capacity building. Now, the LMS now is a very level playing field. As a public servant, as long as you're a public servant within Lagos State, you have access to that platform. You can take multiple courses, and that can help accelerate your own capacity development in the state. Absolutely. So I'm going to stop there.
Thank you very much. I'll add to that we're also doing an industry exchange program that's going to start very soon, where we're taking people from the private sector into industry for a period of 3 months, again, to learn hands-on new technologies. They're going to learn the culture in the private sector and hopefully bring that back to the public sector. So there's a lot going on in that space. So I'm going to leave. Thank you. So I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes or so answering questions. So they're on the hot seat now. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand and we'll identify you. Yes, sir, you have had your hand up for quite a while now. Please, could we have the microphone in front? Right here. Microphone here, please. Taking a long way around. Is it on? No, it's not.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Microphone's not working, I can speak.
Thank you.
I just want to bring a little bit of challenge to the panel. I don't disagree with anything that the panel has said about what's needed for a future modern public service. But what the panel hasn't addressed is what's the purpose of the public service, and this seems to me to be really critically important. The private sector has got a responsibility to derive as much profit in as short a time as possible.
Will you take that?
And this can be really dangerous. Politicians have got a slightly different time scale, usually about 4 or 5 years, but they're focused on winning elections, building constituencies, accumulating power. These two combined have had, if you don't mind my saying so, disastrous implications for the planet as a whole. And the risk is that if you bring these together around this focus just on growth and on wealth, the planet has probably got only another 50 years left to go. So by the time you achieve your plan, Lagos will be underwater and there will be no forests, the climate will have been destroyed. The public service has got a responsibility to be the custodians of the future. And that's what you need your public service to be doing. It needs to be putting in place the mechanisms to control the profit motive, to make sure that it's used for good, to control politicians, to make sure that they take a longer-term perspective rather than a shorter-term perspective. That's the skill set that public service today needs to have. Otherwise, there is just simply going to be nothing left for us to be public managing.
Thank you so much for that existential comment, and I think he's absolutely right. And I love what you said, that we are the custodian of the future. And for every public servant here, I think that should leave you in fear and, trembling, because that's very, very powerful. Thank you very much. At the back, and then I'll come to the front.
Thank you very much. My question is directed to Professor Laupa. I've known you for a while. I knew you were involved in the Ibadan project some years ago. I met at Transcorp during the Nigerian Economic Summit. I think it was last year or so. Now, I anchor a presidential project on national development. And we do feasibility studies and we project the achievements of some government agencies under the Buhari administration. And I've noticed something. Some governmental agencies do virtually the same thing apart from one or two differences, they have the overlapping responsibility. For example, I know with the project with NOTAP, NITDAS, MEDAN, BOI, they're doing virtually the same thing, apart from one or two slight differences. So what are some of your recommendations as to solving this? Because I know there was an Oraswany report, and there was a recommendation as to scrapping or merging some agencies, but I know that for political reasons, they've not been instrumental as to effecting that. That's number one. Then number two, I stay in Abuja, and I can tell you for free that the civil service is overbloated. In fact, I go to most of the federal government agencies, ministries, and they just sit down there doing nothing. If a lot of them find it very difficult to pay, when we do projects for them, in fact, they've actually sent me out of the office. They will say, okay, go. We don't even collect the salary. I go see signs of frustration, and there's anguish, and they're very bitter and the rest of that. So that's one of your recommendations. What efforts are you making as to making recommendations solving the problem? Because I know you've been the voice as to championing reforms in the civil service. That's my question, sir.
Thank
and then
you.
concerning the ASU strike, sir, because it's part of governance. Another name for ASU is strike.
Okay.
What are some of your recommendations as to solving this problem? Because we can't continue like this. A lot of students are frustrated, they're angry.
Okay.
They're, a couple of them have told me they're not even going back to school again.
Okay, so I have to state here that every single Lagos State tertiary institution is not on strike. We are working, and we have been able to address the issues that the federal counterparts are having. We have addressed it, we have solved it, and that's why Lagos State tertiary institutions are in session as we speak. And I think that deserves another round of applause, because our ministry was integral to doing that. And also to just bear in mind that we're talking about Lagos State, and I think your issues are more issues that are related to federal. Lagos State, we pay as at when due every single month without fail. So I don't think the staff have 23rd. Everybody gets their alert. You know, so we don't have issues with payments and frustration, apart from the fact that the pay is relatively low, as Dr. Abba said. But again, Mr. Governor has approved for an increase, and we're working on that. So I'm not sure if we should, because of time, if you don't mind, because they're related to federal, maybe we can take this offline, and I'll just ask somebody else to ask a question. The Commissioner for Finance, and then I'll come to Mr. Ifeanyi. I have to say also that the Commissioner for Finance, I know he doesn't like saying this, but he's one of the youngest cabinet members, and he's one of the leaders that when he speaks in cabinet, everybody listens. You know, excellent at his job, and very well respected, just to show the type of leaders that Mr. Governor has on his cabinet to lead Lagos State.
Thank you very much, Honorable Commissioner. So mine is not a question. Thank you for those kind words. It's just a remark. I just want to do a rejoinder to what Dr. Abba said about being a public servant. The question you posed, initially was how do we attract talent, and we talked about issues of pay. So I think one of the ways to actually attract people into the public service is to go from the point of view of preaching the fact that it is service. I'm using myself as an example. I've worked all my life in the private sector. Pretty good career, very fulfilling career. I got to a point, and I said, this fulfillment is not enough. I was looking for that opportunity to come into an environment where whatever I do can even affect hundreds, millions, affect policies. As Commissioner for Finance, so my job is not just, accounting or finance, agriculture, infrastructure, security, because whatever we do at the State Executive Council affects every, aspect of life. So I think what we can do, and it's been the greatest honor of my life in the last 3.5 years as a public servant.
Yeah.
So it's, there's this tremendous, feeling of success and fulfillment that comes with. And that's why I used to tell people that work for me, for us in the ministry, that you don't know how lucky you are that you are the driver's seat, helping to shape the lives and the destinies of hundreds and millions of people. So to all the public servants, I think we should feel privileged because we are just a few out of millions of people. And from my experience, what I've found out is that out of the brightest minds, committed people I've ever met in my life is in the public service.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
True.
10% of people in the public service will do what they need to do no matter what, whether you pay them well or you don't pay them. There is another 10% that will not do anything regardless of what you do. I think our job as leaders is to manage those 80% that would, either go right or left if you allow them. So we can use the pay system, the flexi work hours, and all the things that you've talked about to manage those 80%. And once we manage those 80%, I can tell you that we are home for good. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And just to add to that, I think just to say that, it's so easy for us to complain as Nigerians. We're the biggest complainers. 80% of us don't even pay tax. So how are we expecting service? I tell people when they complain about Lagos State, first question is, do you pay your taxes? If you don't, then you don't have a right to complain because every single person has civic responsibility to pay their taxes because it's from those taxes that the services can be rendered. Secondly, is for us to recognize, and again, just like he said, I have worked in the private sector all my life, and it was really that opportunity to serve. Doesn't matter, it's to serve the nation and to say that there's no jackpot here. We can solve this problem. We can do it in this country because we have the talent, the mind, the skill set to do it and to get Nigeria to where it needs to be. So please, let's stop complaining. Join hands with the public service to get the job done. Thank you. Okay, so we'll have one question here. I'm very mindful of time, that we have 2 more minutes. We have a hand up in front.
Thank you so much. I have 2 concerns. One is, you're talking about performance and linked to KPIs. How does that work? In terms of eliminating those who do not meet up to the indicators, is it something that is strictly managed? Because if people know that they're going to get sacked if they do not meet the key indicators that they have signed up to, you have to immunize 100 children by 30th of whatever, first quarter. If it's not done, you're gone.
Yeah.
So I want to see how that works. And the second thing is, I'm also very concerned about local government, the connection between the state and the local. Because in most places, it's your local government that you go to get your services, to get your questions answered, and all of that. I mean, I come from the private sector, so I know that it's at that level, it's that point of contact, that delivery must be most efficient.
Yeah.
This plan, it's going to be mostly executed by the hundreds of people at the local government level, at the entrepreneurial. How are we devolving the access to information? In the last session, we were talking about the ACTFA initiative and how citizens can get the information.
Okay.
That should be in every local government.
Okay.
Are we thinking of getting this
Thank you.
into
So
our
that's
plan?
the
Thank
question to maybe Dr. Laupa. And then just one last question, and then I'll just ask people to round up. Can we have...
Okay, mine is actually very straightforward. It's about how we deal with the herd mentality in transition management. Some of the good initiatives we worked on, and I'm happy he's sustained it because he's been there for over 10 years now. What about if he makes a transition and you guys make a transition? We've seen a relapse for more than 4 years. And most of the initiatives actually died out because there's a herd mentality. The herd mentality is that once the chief executive makes a proclamation and there's a departure, no one within the public service, hardworking colleagues here, and I've worked with most of them for over 10 years, has the audacity or the nerve to challenge that? How do we manage that? I have a lot of thoughts, but I know my boss here would say much about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just have Professor Lapa and Dr. Joaba answer those two questions. And then, I'm sorry, my time is up.
Okay, thank you very much for that. The truth is that the public service need deep-seated unbundling. We have carried forward a lot of structures and systems. Really, the kind of structure that we need, we don't have. Those that are existing are outdated. But because of industrial relations issue, we are, so Oronsaye, for example, has been there. It has not been implemented. So there are a lot of duplicated and redundant structure. But it's a lot more fundamental. We need to get back to what is the role of the state relative to market. Should the ministry be running schools? Should they be running hospitals? The services are getting high-end, buy services, use professionalism to deliver. So you need to begin, it's a whole lot. When you rethink the role of the state and you redefine the relative role of civil society and all, then what you do is you then need to look at each ministry and determine what are core functions, what are the non-core functions, and do a lot of restructuring and use other alternative mode to deliver services. The second issue is about this ARPA stuff, I think. Is there anything on performance management?
Local government.
The local government, okay. Now, the local government stuff is that I think the local government are stuck in the old federalism dysfunctionality. They are really not existing as such, except insofar as the state wants them to. But they need to have a bit of a life. The real issue is that over the years, because the community are not governed, people have developed a lot of coping mechanisms. They started doing their waste disposal themselves. They are providing security. They are doing a susu to now. So the traditional rulers are more in charge of community than even the local government itself. Do the local government have even development plan that guys, are they given targets? Are they monitored? Are they made accountable? Are they given resources to really manage? Is the local government capable of attracting the high-end brains? There are so many PhD holders who prefer to operate at that level and serve their people. But really, you need a measure of autonomy. You need a lot of power and authority to be able to function. So we need to really rethink the entire local government system. There needs to be a connection between the state structure and the non-state structure, the community-based structures that have been delivering service to the people all the while. How can there be economies of scale and synergy to drive development?
Thank you very much. So your local government is responsible for many things that you hold state government responsible for. So the roads in front of your house is not state, it's local government. The primary schools in your locality is local government that should run it, even the PHCs. But a lot of people don't know that, so they blame Lagos State for everything. So again, I hear you. We need to see how we can bring them on board and see how they also achieve their own targets. Thank you. So last question, and then we'll wrap up. Sorry, last answer, and then we wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to address a few things very quickly. One is, we must always be careful when we make sweeping statements like the public service is over-bloated, without saying over-bloated for what. And it goes to Chris's point about what is the role of the public service. So if you say over-bloated, maybe for the current services it's providing, maybe. For what it should do and what it should provide, probably we're understaffed.
Maybe.
The entire Nigerian public service at all levels, federal, state, and local, is about 5 million people.
Wow.
The UK, with a population of 60 million, has a public service of 5.7 million people. Wow. And that's serving 60 million people. We have 5 million serving 215 million people. However, the UK produces 6 times Nigeria's GDP. So we must always be careful when we make those sweeping statements. The second thing is, look, you should not go to any public service establishment and find people idling around doing nothing. I have a book out, it's called Nigerians in Theory. One of the things it says is that after a speech, no matter how loudly you clap, the MC will always ask for another round of applause. But the other thing it says is that any public service organization you go to and see people loitering around, the head of that organization is chopping money. I can bet you, I've been a DG in charge of reforms, I know where all the bodies are buried. Anybody that has staff loitering around, go and check very well. That person is chopping money. Because if they are not, the challenges of the state are such that there's no way you cannot create work for people to do, to solve some of those problems. So that's one thing I wanted to say very quickly. Second thing was with regards to what Chris said, and I think he should have been, he should have declared his bias by admitting that he's a civil servant, first of all, so you can see where it's coming from. But, you know,
yes,
but we've actually been quite good at being that custodian and saying no. That was eroded in the 90s when we took away the role of the permanent secretary as accounting officer. That sort of destroyed the independence of the civil service. And even though we later changed that, the mindset never changed. The politician comes in believing that they are the Lord and Master. And, you know, I go to induction retreats for new commissioners, new ministers, and you tell them, Honorable Minister, do you know you cannot sack anybody? Do you know you can't employ anybody? Do you know you can't award any contract? Do you know? They look at me and say, who is this guy? He doesn't know what he's talking about. You think I campaigned and all that to become minister for you to now tell me I cannot? But actually they cannot. Yeah. So they come with these mindsets, which you know is very difficult to actually change. So that challenge hasn't been solved. But the important thing that Chris said is that in addition to, you know, we want a facilitative and enabling public servant with a growth mindset, we also need to retool the public servant and the civil servant to what he was before, where he will give you his unbiased opinion. You like it or not, he's going to set it in writing. And 20 years down the line, this is what he said. If you now choose to do something different, that's entirely up to you. But the civil servant would have stated his position, he would have given you the options, properly researched, and you would have chosen the one you want to take. So we need to retool the public service to do that. But that cannot be our only role. Like I said, we're very good at doing that. We're very good at saying no. What we're not good at is how do we grow this economy? How do we grow this state? How do we work in a different way? How do we bring more wealth? Because to be honest with you, the reason why everybody likes what the Honorable Commissioner of Finance says is because he controls the money. Okay, one of the reasons. So without wealth and prosperity, it's very, very difficult to motivate anybody to do exceptional work or to even attract them into the system. Finally, what Ifeanyi said about managing transitions, again, it goes back to what is the state trying to achieve? You know, what is the state trying to achieve? Because if that is clear, and it's the reason why summits like this are very important, it's the reason why a 30-year development plan is very important. It's the reason why if you do the plan well and every stakeholder buys into it, it doesn't matter who comes, they will follow through. Absolutely. If they don't follow through, they won't get a second term. And I think we have an example of that in Lagos. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, a round of applause for, okay. Last parting words, and then we will definitely round up.
Sincere apologies, but just to say a huge thank you to you and to others for putting this in place. Just some few things again to draw from what colleagues have said and what we have discussed today. You, as the Honorable Commissioner and the head of service, who unfortunately is not here, have a huge task ahead of you to fulfill this development plan. For me, that is to cascade the understanding and the dream of this plan to every civil servant across your different sectors. If it is possible, I'm aware that part of the work we have done with the Lagos State government is to develop mandates across the different ministries, departments, and agencies. Now, that can be tweaked to also incorporate this 30-year development plan, and then run sessions for every part of the ministries, departments, and agencies to understand what that means, what it requires of them, and then give power back to the civil permanent secretaries, directors to now drive the implementation of it, along with other things that have been talked about here. And then finally, to get Mr. Governor's commitment.
Absolutely.
Because it's one thing to talk, it's another thing to walk the talk.
Thank you so much. I can assure you that we have Mr. Governor's commitments to drive this plan and the changes required. And just to add to what you said, yes, power can go back to the permanent secretaries, but also accountability must be there. Responsibility and accountability. And if they don't achieve their mandate, then there should be consequences put in place. So with that, I'd like to thank my panel. And I'd also like to thank the audience for being a wonderful audience, for being as interactive as possible. And we'll take the mandate back, and we'll hopefully get some resolutions that'll be read out from this panel session tomorrow afternoon. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Well done.
See the beauty of this city. What started as a dream is now reality. Everywhere you look, possibilities. We're first among the rest, Lagos City. With great schools, good roads, modern infrastructure, and agriculture, quality education, economic innovation.